Jim Bregman, one of the all-time greats of American judo, once said, good judo relies on good movement. And that's really true. And in today's episode, I'm going to explore and analyze what that good judo movement is and the basic patterns we use and how to use it to control an opponent all the time. So if you want to know more about it, stay tuned. Hi, everybody. I'm Steve Scott, and welcome to another episode of Freestyle Judo. Well, in today's show, I want to analyze what movement is, the type of movements we do in judo. There are some basic movement patterns that we use for good, successful, effective movement of controlling our own bodies, controlling our opponent's bodies in judo. And it's based in judo, but it can be used in pretty much any fighting sport or any grappling sport, especially those that use jackets and belts. But you'll see what I mean. I have, I believe, 4 videos along that line a little later in the show. But before that, I'm going to talk about Sankaku Gatame, the triangle pin. Okay, that's we're going to just have one video of that, and that's not an often used pin, but I've seen it used with great effect over the many years that I've certainly been in judo. And it is a dynamite hold down. So we're going to talk about that in a little while as well. I have Sandy Harrelson, who's used it quite a bit in her own competitive career. She's going to be doing the video with Derek Darling on that. So that is coming up a bit later. But right now, I'd like to discuss a few things about continuing on this tradition, the whatever we're doing here to future generations. And I mention this because when I travel somewhat, I don't travel as much as I used to, but I'm finding more and more younger coaches and younger people, and I don't mean children, I mean young adults, that really don't have a good connection with the history of whatever their martial art may be, and particularly judo. We haven't been teaching history well enough. We haven't been teaching why and how this thing works, and the background of how it got to where it is. There was an English BBC broadcaster, James Burke. He's a great author too. He's done some work on historical stuff, and he had a great show called Connections on BBC many years ago, and he made a series of books based on that. And his whole basis was it's an old mariner saying that he stole from, or he borrowed from, the British Navy. If you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going, and you certainly don't know where you are now. So, I think it's incumbent upon us, who are this generation and who the coaches of today, we need to expand that to our students and our young coaches as well. So there needs to be a sense of, and in part of education, one of my backgrounds when I was in college, in my education classes that I took, the idea was to inculcate people into the culture of what you were doing. That's part of the basis of education, not just to tell them why and how, but give them a sense of belonging in that culture and how what we're teaching is part of that culture. And I think that's really important, and we're not seeing that enough. When I go and I talk to young coaches, and even coaches in their 40s, they don't have a clue on some of the I'm not talking about the nuances, the trivia of judo history. Some of them just don't know their basic history, and they don't know why and how things like kazushi, sukuri, kake, things like that developed and what they really mean. And it's up to us to teach them that, okay? So, and I'm not saying they're stupid. It's no one's taught it to them, and I'm not faulting anyone in particular. It's just we need to do a better job. I need to do a better job, and I think all of us do too, who are kind of in a senior situation that I'm in, and some of you also watching are in as well. So let's talk about that. And like I said, I'm just going to refer to some of my notes here that I've written down here. A large part of training and coaching and teaching and coaching is the continuation of what has gone on before us, okay? There were a lot of great things that developed. I didn't invent judo. You didn't invent judo. Jigoro Kano did. He was a brilliant man. He did a lot of things that people don't realize that we take for granted now. The design of the judo uniform, the concept of belt ranks, the concept of kazushi, sukuri, kake, how to grab the judo gi. The basics of kumikata. A lot of things we take for granted, he developed. And also men of his era developed too that were encouraged by him to develop these things. So I'm not saying we have to worship this guy. I'm just saying we have to recognize the great advances he made and how we can now know those and add to them. That's what our job is now, is to add on to what's been given to us. So it's vital to know the history and the nomenclature of judo and how and why it developed and how it developed, across the board. I mean, it's developed differently, certainly in its native country of Japan, as it has here in the United States, as it has in France or Germany or Great Britain or, throughout the Americas, throughout Africa, wherever you are, it's developed somewhat differently, and it's adapted. And that's one of the beauties of judo. It can and continually does adapt to the needs of the people who are doing it at the time they're doing it. And that's one of the beauties of judo. That's one of the strong points of judo. It's always been that I've noticed ever since I started traveling internationally in the early 1980s, late 70s, early 80s, was that I saw how a lot of different cultures could take the concepts of judo, the basic theory and technique of judo, and mold it and kind of make it their own. Not a totally separate type of judo. They're all based on the same basic principles, but they made it work for them. Judo is very pragmatic, it's very adaptable, it's very utilitarian. And you can use it well, or you can choose not to use it well, but the idea is that you can adapt it to make it work for you. And I think that's a brilliant concept. It's an ongoing philosophy and principle of Kodokan Judo. And I think that's one that we should continually maintain. But again, we have a strong fundamental basis, but we can adapt it to make it work for us. So, judo is both a science and an art. Okay, I'm again referring to my notes here, so please forgive me if I look down from time to time. Judo is a science, just like coaching is a science and an art. It's a science because it's based on sound empirical evidence and biomechanical principles. It just is, Judo is kinesiology in action. I mean, it is. It's the study of human movement and how we effectively control our own body movement and the body movement of our opponents. So that's fascinating. But it's based on sound science. And it's an art because people do it. People can interpret it to work best for them, to adapt it to their needs. Okay, you're a 105-pound female. Your judo technique is fundamentally the same as a 225-pound male, but you're going to adapt it. If you're going to do it right and do it well to work for you, you're going to adapt it to make it work better for your body type, as opposed to a stronger, heavier male. And that's just the way it is. That's what judo should be. So that's why it is both a science and an art, and it's just fascinating. It's the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night, especially at my age. Of course, anything will keep me up at night. I enjoy a good night's sleep, but nonetheless, this is the type of thing that keeps a lot of us up at night. How we can explore judo and make it work more efficiently, and explore it technically. It has no limits. Judo has absolutely no limits, and that's why we say in our Judo Black Belt Association, our AAU Judo program, judo is for everybody. It's a type of thing you can mold it to make it work for you, to make it fit your needs, and it's a wonderful form of physical education. And if you're doing another martial art, if you're in some other type of Jiu-Jitsu or Sambo, what you're doing is based on the sound fundamentals that Kano developed years ago and came up through judo, and you branched out to make it work for you in a different way. You have a different set of contest rules, or you'd have a different philosophy of doing things, but it's still based on that sound, biomechanical, sound educational basis that was developed years ago. And I think we as instructors, we as coaches, that's incumbent upon us to teach these fundamental, important concepts to the next generation. You don't have to sit down and preach to them, but every practice, talk about something that relates to why and how you're there and why and how this stuff's actually working. So it's up to us to keep doing that. Otherwise, people are going to forget some of the really basic, important things that came before them. And I don't want to ever lose that aspect of judo, because it's or any of the martial arts, because we are right now, we're the shopkeepers, we are the keepers of what goes on in this time and place right now, and we took that, we learned that from people who came before us. And so we need to teach it right to our next generation. So I guess I'm talking to the coaches, but I'm talking to everybody. Okay. One last point I want to make before we get into our videos and talk about some technical analysis here is I've always believed this. And by the way, a real quick plug here for my book, The Judo Advantage. Let me show it up right now. There we go. Okay, I'm not necessarily plugging my book, but I guess I am. I'm a shameless capitalist. I have no problem with that. But I do point this out in my book, The Judo Advantage. You know, the biomechanics of it all and what has been given to us by previous generations, all that stuff I discuss. But I also point out in my book that there's a difference between education and training. You know, and so we as a judo instructor, you know, we may specialize in one or the other, but certainly it's incumbent upon all of us to educate our students. Okay, so the education is the emphasis on how and why something works, and or how something is done. Okay, so it's also the theory behind it, and we have to explain that carefully. We have to explain the history, how things developed. That's the education we give. You know, it's not cool or hip. It's just something that has to be done, and we should not fail in doing that. Now, in actual training, you're taking what you taught the students, the basics, the fundamentals you taught them in an educational setting, in a learning situation. Now the training is the actual application. The emphasis is on how to apply the technical and tactical and the strategies of whatever sport it is. Okay, so that's the training of it. So it's more of the hands-on, nitty-gritty, blue-collar type stuff that one needs to do. You know, if you want to train to be a world judo champion, a world Sambo champion, you don't want to just come to a regular judo class or a Sambo class where you just discuss the basics and the theory and the practice and all that, all the fundamentals. You have to have specialized training, and that's what I mean here when I say training. So there's a difference between education and training, and I'm probably rambling on too long, but I think you get the idea. I love coaching, and it's what I've done. I've had a passion for it all my life, and I just hope through these videos that some of what that passion that I have can rub off on everybody here watching it. So that's so much for just the background on, if you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you are, and you don't know how to get to the next place. I think that's really an important aspect that we as judo instructors and all of us in judo need to pass on to the current generation, future generation. So much for that. And let's get on now to some other subjects. The first is Sankaku Gatame. Sankaku means triangle, three corners, Sankaku. Gatame is a hold, holding in place, locking in place, positioning down, pressing down. So it's a pin basically. Okay, it's pinning somebody to a great degree. So this Sankaku Gatame really is kind of an outgrowth of Sankaku Jime, and it certainly is an effective hold down. I know many years ago my sister-in-law Jan Trussell used Sankaku Gatame with great effect in her judo and sambo career. She used it on a number of opponents because she had a good Sankaku. She'd set them up for it, and if it didn't develop or if they were fighting too hard, she just switched right into a beautiful Sankaku Gatame. So, if she couldn't choke them, she could certainly pin them. But also, we're going to show in this video that's coming up, and it's just about 3 minutes, 40 seconds long. Sandy Harrelson and Derek Darling are going to demonstrate how you can put somebody in double trouble. Really, you can not only pin them with Sankaku Gatame, you can also apply a good strangle at the same time. So it's not a real long video, but it certainly is worth watching. And I wanted to put it in here before we get to the main subject of movement, but it's just something different, and I think you'll like it. So anyway, here we go on Sankaku Gatame. Let's look at Sankaku Gatame. Sankaku is triangle. San means three. Kaku is corners, so triangle, three corners. Gatame is to hold in place or to lock. This is a great hold down, time hold, pin in judo, sambo to some degree. You may have some chest contact, but it's also a good controlling movement. So Sankaku isn't just for choking or strangling someone. So I'm going to have Sandy on the right and Derek on the left demonstrate here. So Derek is down, elbows and knees. Sandy is going to do pretty much a standard front attack Sankaku. And if she can get a Sankaku Jime as a strangle, Sankaku, again, triangle, Jime choke. She can get a triangle choke from here, she'll do it. But she may want to get a little double trouble and put Derek in a hole as well. So this has bad consequences for the guy on the bottom. So go ahead, Sandy, just start your move. She starts it. She drives her right foot. Let me come around before you get set there. Notice her right foot is just at Derek's left shoulder. And she really sliced that up in deep. Her right knee is right on the mat, okay? She's trapping Derek's head. Look at her left leg. It's going to be hooking under Derek's right armpit. Now look at her right hand. It's on his belt. Go ahead and grab the belt. Yeah, as a good handle. Oh, I mean, yeah, for now anyway. Now she's going to switch. As she rolls, her left hand will be there as a handle. Now look what she does with her right hand. She can either grab the gi or scoop, whichever, Sandy, your choice, whatever you like to do. And she's going to roll Derek over to her left hip and create the triangle. She's going to pull, get a nice Sankaku. Now that's going for a really nice Sankaku Jime. But now she's going to, let's look at the what we call a judo key lock. Do that again, Sandy. Start your judo key lock. So she forms that. Now with her left hand, she hooks under Derek's left arm, traps it. Now see how she traps it? Look how she flares her hand up. Look at her right hand. Now she's pushing that down to Derek's body. Now what she's going to do is take that right hand and she's going to grab the apron of Derek's jacket and feed it into her right hand. She could be grabbing his belt as well, but in this case the apron is right there to take, okay? So she's got a nice judo key lock, we call it, and she's formed a nice triangle, nice Sankaku Jime there, so she could get a choke out of that. But now she's going to do this into a gatami or a hold. So let's do the first one you like, where you go ahead and grab her around the waist, come over the top, and she swings over and sits over, literally sits on top of the guy into what looks to be a Kamishiho Gatami, but because she's still got that great triangle, and he's tapping because it chokes as well, she's got a nice Sankaku Gatami, okay? Now, can you come back to your intermediate position where you're on your side, Sandy? There you go. Now, if she doesn't want to do that style, she can, with her right hand, grab Derek's left leg, or his left leg, and just turn over and grab it any way she can at the thigh there, and go belly down, and grab it. Okay, go ahead and just grab around his thigh. Yeah, there you go. You can grab that one as well, too. Can you see that? See how he grabs the thigh there, how she does? And look at the position. She's got a Sankaku formed there. And that is Sankaku, and he taps out because there's also a double trouble. Got the strangle as well as the pin. So not just a time hold or pin, it is also a good choke from that position as well. So that's Sankaku Gatame, which isn't just a choke, isn't just a pin. It's a little bit of both if you do it right. You can use either one to get him to tap out or to give up or win the match. So Sankaku Gatame, triangle hold.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that video. I think Sandy did a good job teaching it and discussing it there. We have other videos on Sankaku Gatame on our YouTube channel. Here, I'm going to flash it here before here. There's the shameless plug for our YouTube channel. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, we really appreciate it because we have well over 1,000 videos. I totally lost count how many long time ago. And I think we have about 13,000 subscribers right now, so they're in the ballpark there. So please be one of them. It's free to join. So there you go on that. Well, let's look now at movement. Okay, I think this is fundamentally one of the most important subjects that we can talk about as you know, coaches, instructors, and just good serious students of judo, sambo, jiu-jitsu, whatever it may be. How I move and how I control my opponent, how I control my movement and how I control my opponent's movement is of vital importance. And in the tease, you know, the opener, I talked about Jim Bregman saying this, and he's absolutely right. Jim Bregman one time said to me at a training camp, he said, good judo relies on good movement. You have to have good movement. You have to be able to move your opponent. And again, getting back to my book, The Judo Advantage, that's the whole basis of the book is controlling movement. And I think this is worthy of a show here we have now. So let's take a look at this. I have online here 4 videos, and I'm not going to get into anything beyond the basics right now because in other shows, I'm going to be doing different types of movement setups for different throws and different things in the different movement patterns. But suffice it to say for right now, we are going to discuss in these 4 videos the 3 basic movement patterns that were devised initially in judo And again, these came out of the head of Jigoro Kano and also his early exponents of judo. The three basic movement patterns, or footwork, as it were. Okay, judo and movement in general is called Shintai, but that's the more exact interpretation of that means movement in a straight line, but it generally means overall the study of movement in judo, certainly. And this applies to any grappling sport, any fighting sport as well, because again, these are basic biomechanical fundamental principles of movement. This is the kinesiology of judo, like I said before. This is the study of human body's movements, and this is what this is. So anyway, that being said, the first video, by the way, I did these sets of videos at a coaching clinic we had at Welcome Mat a couple years back, and I forget what year it was, but I had a lot of our Welcome Mat coaches there, and that was the basis of the clinic, is teaching movement, because I think it's important to teach movement right off the get-go, right off the start. So anyway, this first video is the basic concepts and an introduction to movement and what it is, and it's about 2 minutes 40 seconds long, and I'm blabbing on at this coach seminar that I did, and I think I'm using Kenny Brink there as my uke. So anyway, let's look at that first video on the basic concepts of judo movement. Okay, we're going to work on the three primary movement patterns in judo, and again, this would be the same for Sambo, Jiu-Jitsu, anything where people throw each other. Okay, these are the three primary movement patterns, again developed in Kodokan Judo years ago by Kano himself, pretty much. So really important to do. So and again, the reason we're doing these tonight, you know this stuff, you've been taught this stuff, but let's standardize it so we teach it to our students as well, and we can teach our throwing more efficiently. Now remember, earlier we were talking about how you teach a basic move, say koshi-guruma, or say suenagi, or whatever it may be. Often they're stationary, so they learn the real basic gross motor skills. Okay, I get that. But as quickly as they kind of get those gross motor skills and they find some success there, where we really want to get it is when we move into the movement. Body movement of any type, whether it's Ayumi-ashi, Tsugi-ashi, or Tai-sabaki, the three main movement patterns. Any type of movement. Okay, teach it with a partner. So if you're starting a new student, okay, have them work with a partner, because you're not going to do this alone, right? Also, I also try to teach when I'm teaching beginners, to tell them when we do any of these movement drills, and again, one of the first things you should teach them is how to grab the judo-gi correctly, okay? Sleeve and lapel, kumikata, that's the standardized, way of gripping, okay? So we can all practice on an equal basis. Later on, when we get good, we'll come out with all kinds of different grip fighting and all that cool stuff. But right now, we have to start at the same level. Everybody starts from, point A. Well, this is point A right here, okay? So everybody's got a good grip. He's got a good grip on me. If you're a lefty, you're doing left side. We're righties, okay? So we're doing here. Now, what Kenny's going to do, I'm just going to have to say, okay, right up here, he's standing straight, okay? There we are. Good posture. You want about a hand's length between your bodies. Have these little things in your mind so you know if somebody's way back here, they're not doing it right. Well, don't let them correct them. Say, okay, here, what you want to do is you want to stand a little closer. You can do like this. You can do better. Because we want to have our hips close enough to attack, close enough to defend. Okay, so we have to, defensive stuff. So now we're squared up with each other, hips about a hand length apart. Okay, so that's about how far away. I don't want to be too close to them, too far away. And I don't want to be bent over. This is where we talked about shisei, okay? All right? So we want to have good posture and good movement. And again, I just want to emphasize, movement is essential. We should teach movement right from the get-go when we start with somebody right on the mat, no matter what the age group, okay? And as an aside here, I teach a lot of adults, primarily adults, but I also do this with the kids. I teach movement patterns initially while they're learning their break falls, and they're learning their ground fighting, because I believe in teaching from the ground up. As they're learning their break falls to get good, they learn their newaza and basic skills there. But as part of their warm-ups, we do a lot of movement drills as part of our warm-ups. Judo games based on good judo fundamental shintai or movement. So if you're creative, you can teach good movement to your students right from the get-go, and I highly recommend it. That way they're never heavy-footed. A phrase I always said that I see a lot of wrestlers are heavy-footed, because in wrestling it's a different concept of how to take some. They do takedowns, we do throws. Okay, now we do takedowns well. We also do a lot of transitions as well, because I believe in the 3 big T's: throws, takedowns, and transitions. We use all those in judo and sambo and the jiu-jitsu styles where we use a lot of throwing. But wrestling is a bit different because they tend to plant more firmly on the mat. Their mat is generally softer, and so it produces a slower movement pattern that we use in judo. In judo, we want to glide, we want to be graceful. It's not unmacho to be graceful. So in this next video, we're going to talk about one of the first basic movement patterns is Ayumi-ashi. And Ayumi-ashi means normal walking. It's a normal walking step, and how we use it to set an opponent up to control his or her movement. So it's about 3 minutes, 23, it is 3 minutes, 23 seconds long on the cue here. So let's take a look at the first movement pattern. And again, I'm not saying it's the first one to teach, but it's the first of these in this grouping here. Ayumi-ashi, the normal walking pattern. So the first one is Ayumi-ashi. Ayumi-ashi is normal stepping, normal footwork pattern. It's basic, very basic, like like one after the other walking, just like you walk normally. Okay. So Kenny and I are going to do this again. Get a good kumikata, good basic. In a real situation, you might be in a randori or a competition, it'd be a different grip. For standardized training, here we go. Okay. Sleeve, lapel, and Ayumi-ashi, 2 directions. The basic one is I'm just walking backward and we're just walking. Now, don't make the mistake of looking like you're something out of a comedy movie. Don't exaggerate movement, okay? You're not posing. Don't let your students pose. Have them do it naturally and correctly. And if they do it right, again, leading with the hips, just moving. And we're shuffling, we're just sliding feet. And we get to the edge of the mat, so we get the edge of the mat, and he'll take me, and I'll follow him. At first, the kids will all look down at their feet, but after a while, they'll learn. Tell them what to key in off of is the movement of the shoulders and the hips. They don't have to look down at the feet all the time. And I often tell my beginners, just watch, you can just look down, you still look at his whole body, and you can kind of watch how he moves his hips. And where he moves his hips, he's going to move the body. Okay? All right, so I was moving back, and now this time I'm going to move him forward. So before we get to that, I might move him back and I'll say, okay, here's a good way to learn Seoi-nage, whatever it may be. So okay, step, hold, bit in, Seoi-nage. How you would make that movement work for you. Okay? We're not just teaching them to dance, we're teaching them to move into a throw, to throw a opponent more efficiently. So again, one of the things I always teach students is if I'm throwing over my right side, I'll lead with my left foot to start on the back step of Ayumi-ashi. So step, hold, turn around, Seoi-nage. Okay? And they'll get that, and after a while they'll get that 1 step and throw. I generally have them take 2 steps and throw because it's easier to learn. They learn the pattern better. And after that, then we'll do 1 step and throw. Okay? And that way, literally, when we're gripping, we're fighting here, and if I get him to step that way, I can hit him. I know I got that hip out there, I got the position, got the hole I want to go into on that Seoi-nage, I can catch him with it. Okay? Now, the other pattern, again, or the same pattern, but backward, is I'm moving him to his back, my forward, is a Ayumi-ashi. Okay? So I'm going to start with step. So it's like this. And I'm controlling, and I'm leading, and he's going to lead me. He'll start with his left. And we're just moving. Okay? Now, what can we do from here? Well, we can do a forward throw, but also what we can step, hit that Osoda, which I've seen him do a lot with his guys. We drill a lot on that, okay? Or we can do step, swing in, Seoi-nage. We've seen a lot, that's what you do. So you can throw them either direction in a straight linear. There are a lot of throws, a lot of things you can do from a Ayumi-ashi. Whether it's a foot sweep or it's a big, owaza, big major technique, throwing technique over the body, any number of things.
Ayumi-ashi is really important to know. So it's definitely teach it to your students. And a lot of you do already, I get it, but just bear with me on this, okay? All right, that's how important it is. I mean, it is. All right, the next one is Tai-sabaki. And that is one of the most common movement patterns we see in any fighting sport, and certainly in judo. And Tai-sabaki means body management or body movement, but with a strong implication, the strong effect of doing it in a circular turning movement. Okay, you're using your hips quite a bit, you're circling quite a bit. So Tai-sabaki is the movement pattern in a circle often, resulting in controlling your opponent with that circular movement action. So it's a pretty complex concept, but one we use all the time in real-time, real-world practice. So, and there are a lot of setups for Tai-sabaki. And when we talk about it here, you'll see exactly what we're talking about. So again, it's at the same coach clinic I did, and it's about a 3-minute, 40-second long video on using and teaching Tai-sabaki. So here we go. And to me, they're all important, but one of the most useful movements we have in judo is the Tai-sabaki. The body turning, the body management, the body movement. And again, it's always implying in a circular movement, okay? And Tai-sabaki is also used for cutting away and hip blocking. It's any type of hip movement where you're turning, rotating the body. That's a Tai-sabaki movement, okay? And it's a very efficient movement, and we do a lot of things out of it. You load them up, you set them up. And so anyway, two primary ways to do it, okay? The first one, if I pull him, again, real quick here, here's your surite. Right, Eric? Surite? All right, there you go.
I just try to set you up for easy technical jargon.
We joke about that a lot. Surite here, and here's your hikite. Surite means lifting or hanging your suspending hand, lifting hand. Okay, surite is your hikite is your pulling hand. Hiki means to pull. Okay, te means hand. Okay. So they'll go one direction or the other. A lot of times I like to say you're either pulling him into your hip or pulling him into your arm or your foot. And and so when you pull him into your hip, you're pulling him toward your surite, your power hand, your steering hand, your directional hand. Okay. So, and this is also a good way to teach. Well, he's got a tight gi. There's new tight gis. Okay. But this is also a good way to teach, controlling with the hands too, and the lifting, pulling action. But however it is, okay. So we're standing here, and what I want to do is I want to move him to my right toward this lapel here. So I'm just going to turn him around like that, and as efficiently as I can. Because what I want to do, I want to pull him into this because I may hit an ouchigari. I may follow up with a foot sweep if I step up correctly. I might pull him into an uchimata. Any type of a big throw like that. This is a really classic way to set a guy up. From this position here, I'm going to pull him to my power hand, my surite, just moving here like this. I set him up, and I can come across whatever I want to do. Like I say also, it really helps me teach people, I say pull them into your hip. Because when you teach them to pull them into your hip and you load them up, then you can come in and launch them with an uchimata or whatever you want. Okay? So again, that was the first direction toward the surite, okay, the power hand, the directional hand, steering hand. Okay, the other way is toward the sleeve, toward the hikite. And I'm just moving around this way, like that. And I could foot sweep it there. But again, in the direction here, we're standing here. I'm pulling this way. Not making a big deal. It's a lot of movement on my part. Again, turning the hips. Now, this is really ideal for, like, say, a koichigari. A koichigari type setup where I do this, I turn this way, and I right into koichi. I didn't do it very well, but you get the idea. So if I want to turn him here, boom, I'm in direction, I can hit. He put that foot out there. I pull him into this direction here. Osudagari. Perfect. So you see how variable and useful Tai-sabaki is. You're going to use it a lot. You're going to use the other patterns quite a bit too. But this is the one you're going to see a lot of big throws. All three movement patterns are vital. You'll see the next one coming up in a minute, but you've seen Ayumi-ashi, now you've seen Tai-sabaki, and you can see how important Tai-sabaki is. I mean, we use it all the time, and somebody's going to circle around you, you're going to circle them, and you set them up, so boom, there you go. And a lot of our videos we'll be showing here on our what we're doing on this show, the Freestyle Judo show, as well as YouTube channel, Facebook platforms, everywhere we do, you'll see a lot of people turning somebody, setting them up, and just moving them to the side one way or the other. So Tai-sabaki is really an important movement pattern, and you should teach a lot of skills from that pattern. So there you go. The last video we're going to look at here is on Tsugi-ashi. Tsugi-ashi, and this is a little over 4 minutes, about 4 minutes and 10 seconds or so, and there's a little more variety to this in Tsugi-ashi movement here. Tsugi-ashi is more of a shuffle or gliding. It's a follow foot pattern. I explain it in the video. You don't ever cross your feet. By the way, never cross your feet, no matter what combat sport you do. I mean, you're going to get foot swept or thrown right away. So, good Tsugi-ashi teaches this to not ever cross your feet and to use good graceful gliding, sliding, shuffling type movement. One thing in judo movement or sambo movement, whatever, boxing, don't have your foot leave the mat. Okay, slide, glide. Always, like you should hear a little swish when you move. Okay, that's especially taught well in Tsugi-ashi when you teach it. There are a lot of throws that come out of Tsugi-ashi. It's one of my favorite movement patterns, actually. One of the first throws I teach is Okuriashi Barai, the sliding foot sweep. And to do that, I have to teach my students good Tsugi-ashi from a side-moving lateral Tsugi-ashi pattern. And again, there are different patterns of Tsugi-ashi, or angles and sides, and you'll see what I talk about here in the video. So anyway, this next video, the fourth one, the last in the queue, is Tsugi-ashi, or follow foot movement pattern. So here we go. Tsugi-ashi is kind of a shuffle step, a gliding step, a send after step, a follow foot step, and it's a graceful movement. So again, get a good kumikata, good basic, in a real situation, you might be in randori or a competition, be a different grip. For standardized training, here we go. Okay. Now we're squared up with each other, hips about a hand length apart. Okay. So that's about how far away. I don't want to be too close to them, too far away. And I don't want to be bent over. This is where we talked about she's safe, okay? All right. So we're going to have good posture and good movement, okay? So there are three directions of Tsugi-ashi, okay? A straight line back and forward, one back, then forward. And then we also have different variations in angles, but the third one really is the sideways. So we're going to look at all three. So let's work the three patterns. The first one will work, just to recap, have you do this one first. I'm moving backward in Tsugi-ashi. He's moving forward. I'm leading with my left. Okay. The second one be, I'll lead with my left and I'm moving backward. Okay. Forward and back, Tsugi-ashi. I'm going to have you do each direction. Movement pattern is lapel here, sleeve here, and we're just moving sideways. Okay? And he's going to be there, and he'll be moving the same back. And what we don't want to be doing, here's where kids will bounce. They'll bonk, bonk, bonk. Don't let them do that. Teach them not to, because that's not good movement. Now, did you notice I wasn't stepping and crushing him down every time? I'm relying on movement to control his balance. It's the movement, okay? Now, if I were doing the same thing, I'm doing this as a foot sweep type pattern, and a foot sweep would be something like this. I may do a couple, steps, step, step, and sweep, okay? That's a good way, to me, I teach Okuriashi Barai is one of the first skills in judo. Because what does it do? It teaches a good throwing technique. It also teaches really good movement. You have to have good movement. It teaches, by doing that, they learn Kazushi. Okay? So, another application of Tsugi-ashi is
I'm going to be square with him, or maybe even slightly ahead of him, because I'm moving in the direction of the throw. So I'm going to move him in a different direction. Rather than move toward his lapel side, I'm going to move toward his sleeve side. Okay? All right, so when I do this, I may grip around here. I know Kenny teaches this a lot because I teach this as well. But from here, what I want to do is I want to step him into a nice side of Sotogari or Haraigoshi or something like that. So here's the movement, just without the throwing attack. So we're just stepping. Now I'm kind of leading here. Okay, and he'll lead me back. You got the idea. Now, I'm going to take a couple steps. Step, step, hit. Okay? Coming back the other way. In this case, 2 steps. Okay. Step, step, hit. I want to get to the point where I'll take 1 step and hit. Take 1 step, hit. Because he's not going to be dumb enough to take 2 with you. Okay? See what we're doing? We're putting our body in position to attack and defend easily and putting him and controlling his movement. That's what good footwork is about. That's what this stuff's about.
And as I said earlier in the show, we will have other shows here on the Freestyle Judo show here, this series, on different setups you can do from these different movement patterns. And also you'll see a lot of things on my YouTube channel is doing the same thing in our Facebook platforms. You got to set them up. You got to move them to make the throw work. Very rarely will you find somebody dumb enough to stand there and let you throw them. That may happen. You may catch a really good guy cold. You may catch a sucker cold. But you usually have to move them to set them up to make it happen. Again, like Jim Bregman said, good judo technique relies on good movement. And this is what this is about. So this show was based on, dedicated to the basic movement patterns of judo. Okay, so we have 3 of them. And a lot of people, we know these, but coaches set it down and say, this is part of my education of my students, that they know that there are 3 primary movement patterns of judo. And there are a lot of other movement patterns, but they're all based on these 3 primary movement patterns, these 3 methods of footwork. And it's just more than footwork, isn't it? It's a total movement pattern in each of these. But maybe we should have a good systemology or methodology of saying, when we teach our students, they don't have to learn, you don't have to give them a lecture on it, but make sure they know there are 3 basic movement patterns, and you can be successful in all 3 depending on what you do with those movement patterns. So anyway, that's so much on the concepts of basic movement patterns in judo, but again, it expands and applies to every combat and grappling sport, I think, ever invented. So much for that. But hey, thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.